What's up, my fellow scruffy looking nerdfighters, and welcome to the Carbonite Chat. Today we're going to be talking about the oldest information that we have on a Jedi Order that kind of split off from the typical Jedi Order that we know of, and also kind of like a little Jedi war of sense that they had. This new order called themselves the Ordu Aspectu, and we'll kind of get into them. This is from over 1,000 years ago, and it's searching out to find out information. This one group began to start out what was believed by the normal Jedi Order to be heretical kind of thinking about eternal life. And this comes from a video, a fan film that I reviewed about a week and a half ago that discussed the idea of one of the Jedi kind of going against the Jedi Council's orders and searching out this long lost kind of belief system or order that thought that they could achieve eternal life. And I said that it reminded me of something that I had read from the Aphra Comics, and so I said I would review it on Wednesday. And you probably thought I meant the very next Wednesday, but I meant this Wednesday. I definitely didn't forget and do it a week later than originally planned. So getting into it, first off, if you don't know who Dr. Aphra is, it's actually kind of an interesting character from the comics. It's basically a female, female Indiana Jones. And so it starts off, and she goes down, and you think that there's a masked character down there kind of searching out for some kind of artifact, and you think that it's going to be Dr. Aphra, and then it trips something off, and they quickly try to flee out, and there's an explosion that happens. And of course they barely escape, and then they take the mask off, and it's not Dr. Aphra. It's actually another character, and then the character says Dr. Aphra, kind of shocked, and then Dr. Aphra shoots him. And then they get back, and then you find out that it was actually someone else that Dr. Aphra went with to find this artifact. They had backstabbed Dr. Aphra. Dr. Aphra got them back and then actually killed them off. She then goes to try to sell this artifact so that she can make some money to pay back some debts that she owes. And when she goes there, she's told that she's no longer a doctor, and thus she can't sell these artifacts to some of the highest bidders that will only buy things that they know to be verified to be true. When she then starts to question it, she finds out that something happened, that there's a question about what happened or how she was able to get her doctorate, which she actually kind of cheated to be able to do. She lied about some stuff that she had found, stolen some artifacts from someone else, and put them in a location that she could then say that she found them. And so when she begins to leave angrily, she walks out and realizes that it was her dad that ended up kind of spreading this rumor to get her doctorate taken away, or at least suspended, as they overviewed kind of information to find out whether or not it was true. So then she, of course, loses it on her dad and wants to know what it is that he needs. And of course she realizes that he needs something, and that's why he's kind of trying to putting her in a corner so that she'll have to help him. And this is when he mentions that he thinks that he's found the final piece to be able to find the Ordu Aspectu. Now they have a debate over exactly what the truth is, because it's so long ago and the information's been so hidden that it's kind of just rumors that no one really knows. It's a myth of exactly how it went about. And the father begins to kind of tell his side of the story, and he views them as very almost better than the Jedi Order. And he tells the story of the Jedi Order showing up, and they actually have red lightsabers in this scene, and the Ordu actually have the blue lightsabers, almost kind of a white lightsaber. And the Ordu says, defend them or hold them off, but don't kill them. We need to protect life. That's all we care about. And, that's why we're trying to get this eternal life. And then the Jedi are like, this is a heresy. You've gone too far. And they say, well, the Jedi Order have always searched out eternal life. And the other Jedi, the actual Jedi, says to the Ordu, says, yes, but that's only part of what we've done. You've taken this too far. And so his view is that, the Ordu were actually good, and they were trying to figure out a way to preserve life eternally, and that they were ultimately good people. Then Dr. Aphra turns around and says, yes, but it could also be just as equally true. And it shows, and it's a much different look to what you saw before, where this time the Jedi look like typical Jedi and the Ordu look more like Sith. And what you find out is that they're actually, the way that they're going to be able to create this eternal life is by actually killing a large group of Padawans. And that's why the Jedi Order have come to kind of stop them and prevent them from doing what they're doing, that they've gone too far, obviously. And one of the leaders, R-U-R, begins to kind of, say that, this has to happen, that their pain, we're taking away their pain of life and they're taking away kind of the fear of death. And so he kind of shoots this, this electricity through, and it begins to slowly kill off all of the Padawans as they begin to try to fight against each other. As they're trying to fight against each other, the power, taking, I guess, the force of the essence of all of these different Padawans was not enough to be able to accomplish the task that they were wanting to accomplish. And Roar says, try it again, it'll be able to work. And so the other, Ordu member ends up doing it, and this ends up taking his life essence as well. And so it portrays them in a much different light, that they're just nothing more really than Sith, just trying to achieve eternal life. And the Jedi are there trying to stop them and prevent them and kind of hold back, what they're trying to do as something that's very evil. So there's this discussion on exactly what it is that they're trying to do, and are they a positive or a negative thing. Her father then leads them on the first kind of step of their mission to figure this out, and they go to Yavin 4. Now this comic happens directly after A New Hope. So we just had the destruction of the Death Star over Yavin 4, and obviously the rebels have now left and gone to find a new location. And so there's completely covered by Imperials, and they're searching it out, trying to find out information about what is going on. But the temple on Yavin 4 is a Masasi temple, which is a form of the old Jedi, and they're trying to get inside of there. And once they get inside of there, in the floor is this kind of design, and the design looks very similar to what you kind of see from in Rebels, the mural of the Mortis gods. And the father takes out a bunch of crystals, and placing them in around the floor, it's supposed to be able to give him kind of the information he needs to find the coordinates to be able to get to the Citadel of Rur. And as he begins to do this, the sun begins to, it's hard to tell exactly, they don't say, but visually from the comic, it looks like the sun begins to kind of fire off these rays, and it deflects through the temple, and he's able to read it and figure out exactly where to be able to get where they need to go. So then they end up heading to the Citadel. After they head to the Citadel, they get there, and there's just death everywhere. There's bones and skeletons all across of many different Jedis, and he ends up saying that you can tell because of the clothing that they are actual Jedis. These aren't the Ordu Aspectu. And so they try to get through, and they slowly make their way in, but the generator is shut off. And so they find some crystals and put some crystals into the generator to be able to restart the generator. This opens the door, and as they walk through, there's these kind of like, I'm not really even sure how to explain it. The picture will be up, so I can't explain it right now, but it's open where you can just fall off on the sides. It opens up into space, and there's this center spear that's kind of a spire that's in the middle. And the father says that they did this because it was kind of a lesson that they wanted to teach any of their followers, that how small they were in comparison to, the majesty of space. And so that's why there just was empty, falling to the ground. And so they try to make their way to the spire, but it's not completely open. Now, in this, I'm kind of skipping around a little things that don't have to do with this direct story, and I don't think ultimately have that much purpose in the overall story, but somehow the Imperials were able to follow them to this location. I don't know how they were able to do so, but they were able to follow them there. And so they begin to fire on them, so they've got to figure out a way to they're trying to get to the central core, which is in the spear, to try to figure out any of the information that the father wants to be able to know about what happened there. And Aphra ends up putting some some of the crystals into this, computer area, and it sets up this force bridge that allows them to walk across to be able to get to the spear. Once they get there, they're trying to figure out what's happening, and they end up having to kind of shut down the force bridge, and this closes down this wall behind them, and they take this elevator down even further into the core. Once they get there, that's when they find the skeletal remains of Roar. And of course, they begin to realize that maybe he wasn't as immortal as he may have thought he would have been, or as some of the myths has said he became. And so the father begins to be let down. He explains that the whole reason behind all of this is that he wanted to create a spiritual awakening, or I guess in this case a force awakening. And he wanted to create it because this is after he started searching after Order 66, after the Jedi had died, and he sensed that there was actually evil taking over the galaxy. He hoped that if he could find this Ordu Aspectu and it be the way that he's viewed it, that it would actually be a way to kind of bring back light into the galaxy. Ironically, he had said that he didn't even notice or know anything about what happened on Yavin 4. He didn't know anything about the actual Death Star, and so he didn't know anything about Luke Skywalker, which was the New Hope that was bringing light to the galaxy. And the darkness of the irony is that his search in and of itself actually caused him to miss out on what was actually happening the way he wanted it to happen. And so she kind of begins, Dr. Aphra begins to feel sorry for him, and then she reveals that she had actually pulled this quite large crystal from, kind of in the remains of Roar, and says that, if you want to find out this information, you can find it out, but it seems like he died trying to shut this down. So whatever it is, are you sure you want to do it? And of course, he's too obsessed with the idea, so he puts it inside, and once he puts it inside, up pops this kind of like hologram's not the right kind of explanation. It looks very similar to when Yoda went to Moraban in Clone Wars. I believe the episode is like season 6, episode 12. That may be wrong, but I believe it's called Sacrifice. And he goes and Darth Bane appears, and he has a discussion with Darth Bane. It's very similar to that, but it's also kind of a green look, which is more like Mother Talzin, which also fits with what's happening next. But he ends up saying that I am Roar, and they say, no, Roar's dead right here. And he goes, that's the fake Roar. I am the eternal Roar. And so he begins to explain what kind of all went about. And you find out that Roar was trying to figure out, it was kind of a melding of the two, that he wasn't killing off Padawans, but he was trying to figure out how to get eternal life. And the way he was doing is he was putting his essence, or he was putting his intellect and his knowledge into this core and trying to do it in such a way that he could sustain his knowledge and information for future. And in doing so, though, something happened. It's not explained incredibly well in this. Something happened that actually what was going on was his, kind of essence or sentience was being kind of pulled out in creating this form of an evil ghost now called the Eternal Roar. When this happened, the Eternal Roar, finding out, was trying to continue to get as much information as he could from Roar, but the Jedi Order wanted to come and check out and see what he was doing, making sure it was a heresy, making sure that something evil wasn't going on behind closed doors. And so this is where we get the myth, because it kind of leads up to, we know the Jedi went there and then nobody returned. So what actually happened? And so that's where the myths came about. But what actually happened is the Eternal Roar was able to control the machines around and actually fight as if it was like, he was controlling, like it was a cyborg and he had the mind, and was able to move them around as if he was the actual Roar. And in doing so, he basically instructed them to kill all organic beings. That's the Ordu Aspectu and the Jedi Order. And while this was going on, he begins to kill them all off, but Roar was able to fight off, and one other member of the Ordu Aspectu was able to fight off a little bit and actually pulled the crystals out from the generator. And then while he was actually having the machines attack and kill Roar, he was able to use the Force and pull that final crystal from the spot that ended up actually shutting down the Eternal Roar, who actually, I guess, wasn't eternal, but it's just kind of a computer being, I don't know. And this shut down his consciousness up until this point, which has been thousand years later. This, of course, greatly angers the Eternal Roar, and he decides to go and try to kill them all off. And Aphra then tries to escape. Now, as Aphra's trying to escape, this is where some issues run in with the comics and how it actually functions properly with the way the story's been told. But she goes to try to escape, and her whole plan is to make it to the generator and, take out the crystals, and this will then cause the machines to no longer be able to function, and then they won't be killed off by the Eternal Roar. But in doing so, she leaves her father behind, and there was a lot of machines right around there. She shot some, but it shouldn't be all of them. And then she had taken a bunch of lightsabers because she does collect artifacts and she was going to sell them later. Then pulls out a lightsaber and is cutting apart some of the machines, which this girl with no force abilities and no training and never used a lightsaber is able to cut through some machines that were able to kill a large group of the Jedi Order and a group of the Ordu Aspectu. I mean, okay. I'm not going to dig into that one. I'm sure people in the comments will dig into that more than I'm going to hit on for this video. But she makes it there. There's a very large crystal, and she pulls it out, and so they're able to get away. When they get away, they're discussing what to do with this. Apparently, it kind of holds the essence and knowledge of Roar. And the father says it's pure evil, that it needs to be destroyed and gotten rid of. And Aphra is saying that, they need to hold on to it, because if they don't hold on to it, there's some information and they can gain some information and knowledge from it. And what they end up saying that they're going to do is they take it to this quarantined world and they then give it to them to then put away so that nothing can be done with it. Is then, of course, later revealed after that she was just lying to her father and that was a fake one and that she still has it. So kind of leaves up open-ended at the end of this story for the Dr. Aphra Comics 1 through 6 that it's still open, that it can still be somewhere to be used by someone else for evil plans or ideas. So it's not completely ended, and the Ordu Aspectu and the information of Roar is still out there and still can be used for evil or possibly positive things. I thought it was kind of interesting. Gets a little weird in points. It's just a comic, so I'm not going to go over the top on trying to break down so much stuff. I may do it at a later point, but I wanted to get this video out and kind of make those connections to that video that I said had connections to this, and also start up a discussion and get some more kind of thoughts about how all of this kind of fits in with what we know about Star Wars and whether or not it's intriguing and there's just not enough information, or it's leading down a bad path along with some other stuff. I'm not getting worked up about it right now. I haven't given it as much thought because it is a comic, and that's why I'm not getting overly bent out of shape about different things, or that I may would with a movie or even a TV show or even a novel. Comics are kind of low on the list. But it was interesting. It was kind of interesting to look back. I think it would have been very interesting to have this be something that we actually were able to see in the future. In my video that I posted a little earlier today, people talk about there's no stories that you can do. Well, this is another story that you could have interestingly kind of told and looked into about a split off of the Jedi Order. In one of the comments that I don't think I actually made, when Dr. Aphra is explaining the Ordu Aspectu and their opinion, they argue that the Jedi have always looked after kind of searching for eternal life, but they're just the first ones to ever actually truly mean it and go after it, fully and completely. And so it's kind of one of those things, like a really good villain doesn't realize that they're a villain, and he thinks that they're just trying to, if they can get eternal life, then this will be the best thing for the entire, galaxy. And I think that would make it a very interesting story where you actually have Jedi versus Jedi. And again, you would have to have, this would have to be back in the, older times, 1,000 years ago, Old Republic type stuff. So But I mean, again, that's just another type of story. And this could have been expanded upon so much more than it is now, and probably a bit better. But, you know, it's in the comic, but it's just another example of, like, there's so many stories. And, you know, there's so many stories we've already got in the expanded universe that so many of us love, with, you know, from those happening after episode 6 and then those happening back in the Old Republic. There's so many stories and there's so many good things out there. It's unfortunate we're getting the bad things for canon. But anyways, I look forward to hearing all of your thoughts on this down below. Look forward to discussing everything, your opinions, thoughts, connections there might be to some things like this that actually happened in the old EU. And I look forward to that. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and never forget, you nerf herders, I love you.